So what do you do with this crisis management? Well, first you need your crisis team members. You need somebody from public affairs. Who's going to be the face or the voice? Who's going to be your public spokesperson, public relations person? Now, public affairs and consumer relations in some companies are often the same thing, but not necessarily. Consumer relations is about the consumer's image. Public affairs is a little different. That's handling media, handling the news cycle. And they're slightly different problems you're dealing with. What about your science and technology team? They need to be on board. What about your quality assurance? They're part of that. Government and regulatory affairs person, who's handling your legal government compliance issues. Sales and marketing team, they need to be involved. Manufacturing and operations definitely need to be involved. Now, this might be manufacturing, this might be field production if you're a grower. It depends on where you are in this. Manufacturing would be the salad companies or something like that. What about your legal team? Not only inside counsel, but outside counsel. Who do you call? Do you have somebody like Brad Sullivan on speed dial? If not, you should. And they should be reviewing your plan and part of those meetings. Pay for them to spend some time with you to make sure that your plan is well prepared and well rehearsed. Inside counsel, inside legal teams are usually about contracts. Companies can't afford to have the membership or an employer of every possible legal issue you might deal with in a company. So who do you hire? Your day-to-day legal stuff, your contracts. I apologize, I wasn't sharing the screen for a moment there, but you already saw the 4 questions at the end of the previous one. This is the list of the things I've been talking about. So all of these different members need to be on your team. Your risk management people, whoever that is, the CEO or president, the executive team, who is that, and other members necessary as appropriate. Now, who this is depends on the size of your company and how it's organized. But these are the main areas that need to be in the loop for crisis management if there ever is a food safety problem. Got to deal with it. So what questions do you ask of your crisis team members? So what should my area do? What is my piece of this crisis management puzzle? How should we do this? How do we handle our issues? When should each action be taken and by whom? How does this affect what others are doing as part of the crisis response? How does this support the overall mission to resolve the crisis? And does the crisis team leader support this? You need a leader, somebody at the head of the table who is your crisis management person, and they have to make sure that they see this all fitting together. One issue is managing communication. And I've seen this happen over and over again where there's a food safety outbreak. What do companies do? They have some shifts. They've got their employees come in. They run their shift for 8 hours. They leave. They get in their cars and they go. A good reporter hears about a food safety outbreak. What do? They go to the parking lot waiting for the end of a shift, and they start asking questions of the employees coming out. So have you heard about this food safety problem? What's going on? Do you have any examples of, food safety problems in the company? They'll start asking your workers. And the workers might stick their foot in their mouth and say something they should not be saying. Maybe they're just saying things that they think are true, or there's a camera in their face. You've got to train your employees to shut the F up. Period. The only people that need to be talking are on the crisis management team. Now, in terms of legal issues, if you get approached for being deposed for legal responses, that's a little different, but you don't have employees talking to the media. They don't know what they're doing, and they often will say things that sounds okay, and they don't realize it's not even true. But it's now on tape, on the news. And that's very different than a cover up. I'm not talking about covering things up, hiding the truth. I'm talking about managing the message with factual information. So this goes into some of the details. I'm not going to test you on this details of what public affairs and communications does, but it is about the message. It is about making sure you have a good message and possibly getting an outside consultant to help you with that message. And you even have some pre-planned speeches. It's always best to get ahead of things. We know there was a problem and we take full responsibility. We are currently investigating what's going on, and we will do everything in our power to help those people who were sickened by this. And if we find we were doing anything that we should not have been doing, we'll fix it. Now, that's probably not a really good way to say it, but you get the idea. You take responsibility and you say you're doing things and you're helping the people who were harmed, period. By trying to hide, by trying to wait 2, 3, 4 days to get all of the data before you get your message out to the news is going to report all the bad things, and everybody's going to forget what you said. Or even if your company wasn't responsible, get out in front, be the good guy, be the guy that cares, be the company that cares about your consumers. Again, consumer relations, looking at your consumer issues. You might be looking at a consumer hotline, having that 1-800 number that is easy to access, that's right there on your website. Anybody goes to, hartnellfoods.com, and right there, food safety, consumer hotline, big red button or something, and your consumers can be reassured that you're dealing with this, because they can get information. They click on the button. It gives a very brief and to the point message. If they really want more information, they need to talk to somebody, 1-800, whatever. Sales and marketing, they have their own issues to do. You've got to keep your customers happy. You've got to make sure you handle this, because a lot of things might be happening. You might have sales planned for the next 6 months for lettuce, and nobody wants to buy your lettuce because of this outbreak. And so how quickly can you get back up and running? How many of those sales are going to fall flat because the customer is going to cancel the order? Got to handle it. Operations, they have their own deals in either field production or the manufacturing environment. You got to make sure that you know what went wrong or what could have gone wrong as quickly as possible, and double check everything to make sure you are operating in a safe manner. Your legal team certainly has to be looking at everything in terms of what their response is going to be to protect the company. The owners of the company, the executive team, has their responsibilities. Generally, the CEO is not the crisis leader. They got other things to deal with. The crisis leader in most of the teams I've been involved with is a public relations specialist, somebody who's handling the message, but not always. It could be an operations person who has a better understanding of the total breadth of what the company really is doing, where the food safety problem actually happened. And so having operations as the crisis leader often makes sense. Having the message person, the public face on this, often makes sense. It depends on your company, and there are different ways of doing it, different arguments for who is that person. But the CEO, they generally want to be handling the business, not handling the recall or the food safety crisis. So you need effective communication across the board. The media, I should add to that social media as well. You've got to manage your website. You've got to manage the Twitter and Facebook and other types of things. What's going on Instagram and everywhere else. Who's doing what that affects your company? You got to keep on top of it. Successful communications themes in a crisis. Take responsibility for the problem. I already mentioned that. Take responsibility for solving the problem. We'll fix this. Take responsibility for protecting your consumers. We are going to ensure that the public is safe. Again, a single unified voice. You don't want to try to respond to everything. You know, there might be too many questions coming in, and you can't answer every single question. You'll get caught up in possibly mixed messages or miscommunication, or just getting bogged down in the background noise of the crisis event. But you got to do this quickly. You've got to be ready before it ever happens. You've got to have, you know, the top 5 crisis events already figured out. These major 5 categories of crises that could happen at your company. And you got a plan to deal with every one of them. And just saying food safety recall crisis, people got sick, that's not enough. What happened? How? With what products? You know, you've got to think this through in some detail, because you don't respond exactly the same way with exactly every crisis. Different crises need different responses to an extent. There are subtle differences. You have to think that through in advance. Let's take a quick break.